interviewed you before.
Oh God.
Many years. The Cold Lake album, actually.
See, I knew that.
You were afraid of that one. Actually, that was the album that kind of introduced me to the band. You know, he was a big fan.
Okay, goodbye.
Sorry. I mean, you know, I loved the band because, you know, at least I was introduced to them.
Okay. First question. Okay. What has been the overall feedback from long-term Frost fans about the new album?
It's extremely positive. This is probably the most acclaimed album that we've ever done, which is astonishing given the history of the band and the unpredictability of the band, and the fact that we basically did this album just for ourselves. It's amazing. The album has been received amazingly well.
Okay. Why the change in the musical direction?
What change? What kind of stupid question is that? What change?
I'm sorry. I didn't mean
do you know what kind of band you're talking to? Have you heard our old music? So
I'm a huge fan.
Where's the change in musical direction? Every album has been very different from the one before.
Right.
And so is the new one, even though it still sounds like Celtic Frost. It's probably closer to Hellhammer and very early Celtic Frost than any other album before. And yet this is something completely new in the line of our albums.
Right.
Which is exactly what Celtic Frost is all about. Celtic Frost has not been about perpetuating one album that has been successful, but doing the opposite, doing a new album every time, abandoning what was proven and secure,
right.
Being courageous and daring, being artistic, trying to create something new within the context of the band, while trying to make it still sound like Celtic Frost. And I think we only failed once at doing that.
Right. Cold Lake.
Which was...
On the other hand,
I don't want to dwell
on the other hand, I want to see any other extreme metal band that has the courage to do albums like we did, including Cold Lake.
Right.
Nobody would even do an album like Pandemonium, and much less Cold Lake. Suicidal or not, I want to see any other songwriter who has a career like that, survives it, and is daring enough to just do whatever he wants, like a real fucking artist.
That's what it's all about, Tom.
And one of the questions I always get in an argument with friends of mine is it's pronounced Celtic, not Celtic?
Celtic.
Okay. All right. You got that out.
Everybody's always concerned about how much do we sell, and do the fans like it, and do we still have the credibility. We always did the albums we wanted to do. This is what Celtic Frost is all about. And the new album is more than any other album. We've done the album we wanted to do. We've done a deeply personal, deeply emotional album, which arose from our personal feelings during these past 4.5, 5 years.
Thought Celtic Frost was nowadays, and of course, you know, that was us taking into consideration where we had come from, because we wanted to be true to ourselves as well. We wanted to be true to what we thought Celtic Frost was and where Celtic Frost was coming from, and even more so than we ever did before. You know, I mean, any time before in our career, any time before in our artistical strive, we've always been looking for what we wanted, where we wanted to go, or what we thought was important to ourselves. And I think this is the first time we really went back to the very roots, you know, and said, like, what was it that made Celtic Frost in the first place, you know?
Right.
Yeah, but we didn't do that music. We didn't set out to write songs like that.
No.
We did it on a philosophical level.
That's right.
Why did we become friends?
It was
what bonded us?
Was more on a philosophical and aesthetical level.
We hadn't seen each other. We hadn't worked together for like 10 years.
I mean, it took us like 4 years to accomplish Monotheist, to actually become a band again, to become Celtic Frost again. And in all those 4 years, we hadn't rehearsed one of the old songs once. We never played, not even Procreation. I remember we played the first 2 verses of Procreation, and he sung one word, and then we said, like, that's it, you know. No more of this.
Was that considered
no more
a big
of this.
hit? Was like not really the song people requested a lot, like Procreation of the Wicked?
No, it's a song I request a lot.
I play covers of that song in my band. It's my favorite Celtic Frost song.
It's one of the most difficult Celtic Frost songs to play accurately, even though it consists of only like 2 riffs. But it is to actually play the song the way it needs to be played, with the groove it needs to have. It's one of the most difficult, much more difficult than even the Requiem or anything like that.
Well, I know when we play it, they like Celtic Frost better than my own music. So. Did you ever do any recordings with Apollyon Sun?
Yeah, the 2 CDs.
Oh, did you?
Yeah.
Because I tried to look them up on the internet and I couldn't find how to get to
Well,
them.
that's quite a long time ago.
Okay.
One came out in '98, one came out in 2000, and the record company by the time the second one came out, the record company felt unable to identify with that music. It's a long story, very complicated story. Still, they got very good reviews in the press, and yeah, there's 2 CDs.
I would love to hear
But it's not essential material to understand Celtic Frost. It was the opposite. The Point Sun was something I needed to do musically to clear my mind after Celtic Frost, and I think it has a lot to do with me being fresh enough again to go back into the friendship with Martin and into writing a new Celtic Frost album. I really needed to do something completely different, as Martin did on a different level. We all just needed to go our separate ways to do something completely different.
I always wondered something about you. How come you weren't on the Megatherium?
It's a good question. What I'm wondering myself sometimes, you know. I mean, you know, the people always say you should be, you know, you shouldn't worry about things that that I'm sorry for in my life. You know, it's a complicated story. It has to do with the fact where I was at the time in my life. It has to do with the fact where the band was at that time in its existence. And for like a certain time, for a couple of weeks, couple of months, but crucial months, of course, things just weren't working out. You know, things just weren't like on the same level. You know?
Right. And
that's to put it easy.
Yeah, but I need to set this also straight. As everything with Celtic Frost, it's not quite that simple. To Megatherium was conceived together with Martin. The artwork, the design was conceived together with Martin. Most of the songs were written together with Martin. After recordings with a session bass player, we went back to the studio and re-recorded the bass with Martin for 3 songs, which are included on the reissues. The album is very much Martin. The fact that he doesn't play on it is something I hate to this day.
Right.
But the album was written with Martin. The lyrics are by Martin. I mean, everything on this album bears Martin's stamp.
But I didn't do the original recording.
Right.
Exactly. But it's not as simple.
Tragic Serenades EP afterwards. That's of course where the 3 songs were published the first time. You know, we re-recorded that, and because Tom and Reed were really not that pleased with the outcome of the production. You know,
the bass playing.
Do you still talk to like Reed St. Mark or Steve Priestley or?
Reed St. Mark, very much so. He's a very good friend of ours, and he's coming yet again to the shows they play in New York. He's been to several shows in the last tour.
And was Steve Priestley an original member of Hellhammer?
No. No, he was a member of Hellhammer for maybe a month in the latter stage of Hellhammer, but he wasn't an original member. No.
Oh, okay. Because you've had a lot of different musicians yet.
He knows who we have.
In Hellhammer? There was like a million lineups in Hellhammer. There was like 10 or so lineups. It'll all be documented in the book that's going to come out.
Oh, you have another book coming out?
Martin and I are working on a Hellhammer book, and we hope to be finished with it by the end of this year. It's the mother of all Hellhammer books. It's going to be a coffee table sized book with hundreds of unreleased photos, artwork, the detailed history of Hellhammer, also in the context of the time, the heavy metal revolution at the time, the birth of extreme metal. It's also the bigger picture of the whole thing.
Well, you guys I credit you guys with almost, I would say, coining the term death metal. I don't know anybody that was heavier than you guys.
We were part of that, yeah. You know, I don't think we deserve the credit in any of these things alone.
I have proof.
You know.
Oh, God.
This is the first thing I ever had that was called death metal, and
this logo was taken from a fanzine Martin and I had called Death Metal, which we gave to the record company and told them to use that logo because this album was supposed to be called Black Mass.
Oh, okay.
And we looked at the bands, we're like, none of those bands are
they're not
black metal or satanic.
Not
so
at all, right.
We said change it at least to this logo, which I designed.
Oh, okay.
So Martin and I sent them the fanzine and said, why don't you call the album Death Metal? It's going to appeal to a much wider audience, and they used the logo of my fanzine.
So genuinely, you can say you coined the term death metal.
No. The term death metal was used in the underground by a handful of people, and we were just part of that handful of people.
Okay.
But I don't know. We didn't invent that. As many other things, I think we were just there at the right time, and we loved all that stuff, so we were part of the first wave.
Okay, because
but I don't want to take credit in an unjustified manner.
I'm going to say, but as far as your vocals and also how heavy and low and down-tuned everything was, I never heard another band before you guys that struck me like, whoa, this is so heavy, it's unbelievable.
You see, that's the funny thing. music wasn't down-tuned.
No.
Everybody thought it was down-tuned, but it wasn't down-tuned, you know. And of course, we were cutting-edge extreme metal. You know, we were one of a handful of bands with Hellhammer and then with Celtic Frost. There maybe were like half a dozen, maybe a dozen at that time. We're talking about the first half of the 1980s, you know, that you could consider to be really extreme metal, not just like heavy metal on a different level. You know, there were a lot of bands inspired by the new wave of British heavy metal, inspired by Judas Priest or Iron Maiden,
right.
But there were only a handful of really extreme bands, you know. And
like
Celtic Frost was one of them, you know. Of course, like Venom being the main inspiration for most, probably almost all of these bands. Venom and a couple of hardcore punk bands like Discharge, for example. You know? But because otherwise, what else do you have? You had Motorhead, Iron Maiden. You know, that was about as extreme as it got. You know, and of course with Hellhammer we were considered to be black metal, and we actually started as a black metal band because we were complete Venom clones when we started out. You know, we were absolutely, I mean, monikers like Satanic Slaughter, you know, or Slate Necros. That was directly inspired, trying to do our own take of Mantas and Kronos. You know,
Slate Necros.
I was Slate Necros. Yeah, that's right.
Satanic Slaughter. And who was the drummer?
Denial Fiend.
Denial Fiend, right?
Bruce Day. And we were like blueprint black metal. You know, first generation black metal, and of course you had Merciful Fate coming on, but musically speaking, Merciful Fate wasn't black metal. The only other black metal band that did come up at that time, a little bit later on, was Bathory.
Right.
Of course, who were also following the blueprint of Venom 1-1. You know? Although Kronos, although Quarton keeps saying that he never heard Venom up until like the second Bathory record.
Now.
You know. Yeah, it's true, but you know that this was the only other extreme band in that vein, and we wanted to get away from the black metal thing, because all of a sudden you had bands like Running Wild, writing songs like Adrian, Son of Satan, and then a whole lot of other bands were jumping on that like satanic black metal wagon and didn't have anything to do with it, you know. And you had lyrics without really realizing that some of the writings of Anton LaVey were meant to be more on a philosophical level than actually, you know, how to do, you know, level, or DIY level, you know. Right. And so we tried to get away from that, and we wanted to be, of course, just extreme. And we thought like, what was just as extreme as Satan, as the devil, as hell? And we said like the most extreme thing for every human being, you know, is death. So death metal would be the only other extreme thing that most probably fans would take serious, that would stick, because black metal was radical. So if we wanted a term to use, it had to be just as radical as that, you know. Hence death metal.
It's nice how the record company interpreted that literally, like there's metal fans and they're being eaten, so it's like death metal.
And also, I also love how they made this like this three-dimensional metal shine to it. You know, we didn't have that. We always hated that basically. So we hated that in the early days. We didn't want that in the early days.
On one of your songs, Drown in not Drown in Ashes. Synagoga
Satanae.
So no, we'll answer the question once you can pronounce the name.
But I noticed that Seder from Satyricon is on there.
Yeah, what's the song called?
Synagoga Satanae?
No.
Synagoga?
No.
What's the house of God? The Jewish house
Synagogue?
of God? That's right.
Okay. Synagogue.
I mean, that's the least you can expect from an interviewer, that he pronounces the question correctly, right? Without being cynical.
Tom, I haven't been to college or anything.
It's Latin.
Neither have I.
It's basically, in English it would be Synagogue of Satan.
Right,
you know?
Okay.
Or Satan's Synagogue.
I kind of assumed that might be the...
And it's a term that was used in the Book of Revelation, in early Christian writing, to depict the counter-church, basically. Because if God had a church, so the enemies of God had a church of their own. You know, but since God is like the supreme highest being, there can only be one church. So you couldn't even use the term church for that other congregation. And so hence they use synagogue. You know, of course the Christians being a radical Jewish sect to begin with, you know, that strayed away from the original doctrine. You know, the first enemies of the Christians were the Jews, because they were a Jewish sect, and they were like, hey, what you are teaching here is not Jewish doctrine. You know, you are going against it. You're going against the sabbatical law. You're not allowed to do that. You're converting Gentiles, you know, just by baptizing them with water. You know, it takes years if you want to take on the Jewish faith. You know, so of course the first enemies to the Christians, or what the Christians considered were the Jews. Hence, they gave it that name. You know, you know, or early anti-Semitism there in the Bible already.
About Seder, if you got, did he commit suicide recently? A friend of mine told me this the other day.
What?
And I was like, I have not heard of that, but I know he's on the album, and I was.
Well, I talked to him just 3 weeks ago or so.
Okay.
I don't know. Maybe in the meantime. I talked to him. 3 weeks ago. He asked me to write material for the new Satirican album.
Wow.
We were going out eating with him in Oslo and Norway when we played there.
He didn't really talk about the end of his days. He talked about future plans together.
I assume because they're one of my other. I really like them.
Interesting though.
That's how rumors are.
I'll call him and let him know that he's dead.
Yeah.
This is another just something that I did. The song "Drown in Ashes." Played it for my ex-girlfriend, and she's a huge Peter Murphy fan. I said, "Oh, Peter Murphy has a new song out." So I let her hear it, and she really liked it. Right?
That's mean.
And then I told her it was Celtic Frost, and I had already played them to death for her. She was kind of irritated whenever I'd play them. But she used to irritate me with U2 and stuff like that. So, but just was wondering, you know, how if you've been compared to Peter Murphy.
Well, that's flattering, but I don't think I can even remotely reach Peter Murphy. Peter Murphy is an icon, and yes, he's an idol to his work is iconic to both of us. But I don't think. I mean, we're Celtic Frost, and we're trying to do what we do, and we try to be good in what we do. But I don't think we can reach people like that. I mean, credit where credit's due. Peter Murphy is an absolute icon. He's amazing.
And then I also heard that you had an arm wrestling contest with Stan Ridgway, and that was why you had to release.
You're just making this up to get.
Radio.
You're making this up to get like good answers, right?
Yeah, I've heard this.
That's all
rumors. I've heard. Okay.
I've been in correspondence with Stan Ridgway maybe a year ago on MySpace. He actually contacted us, but that's the only direct contact we ever had, as far as I'm aware.
Okay, so the reason for Mexican radio was not like
the reason for Mexican radio was that, particularly Martin and I, were extremely open to other music, and Celtic Frost was born during the time of the new wave movement, and both of us liked different bands from that movement, and we both agreed on well, it would have been a great band. And I heard one night, we were talking about doing a cover version, and I knew the song beforehand, but I heard it on the radio one night, and I thought, why don't we cover this song, because it's fantastic. And it was a struggle to get it done. We did like 4 versions that just didn't work before settling on what's on the album. It was very difficult. It was the first time we attempted such a cover version. It was very difficult to actually get that accomplished. Celtic Frost doing a radically different song in a Celtic Frost manner.
Okay.
But it's basically the band bowing to some of our inspiration.
Now, with you guys and the fictional band Spinal Tap, have you ever heard like a?
I think every heavy metal band, every hard rock band is Spinal Tap impersonated, and we are no different.
Well, because of all your different styles. And
No, but I mean, so many things that you go through in the heavy metal scene. I mean, that applies to every band. It's so Spinal Tap-ish. Spinal Tap is not fiction. I mean, as everybody in the scene knows, a lot of the Spinal Tap stories are taken from actual on-the-road stories. So we're no different to any other metal band. Spinal Tap is a life that you live, whether you want to or not.
Well, one of the
that's why basically Spinal Tap is funnier to people that are in this business than to people than are not. Usually when I play Spinal Tap to friends of mine, when they want to know how it is like out on the road, and I play Spinal Tap to them. Sometimes they're sitting there like, yes,
They don't get it.
they don't get it. Some of the stuff they just don't get.
One of the parallels I thought may have been like something from the movie that seemed like was happening at the time when I had met you before with Cold Lake was you had just gotten married, and then Martin had left
I've read
the band.
that. There's a rumor online. Yeah, my girlfriend managed band. That's all bullshit.
Okay.
No, I got married. I was sidetracked.
Are you still married?
No.
No.
I was sidetracked by that.
Mm-hmm.
That's one of the facts. I was sidetracked. I was very happy. I was happy for the first time in ages at the time, and then I indulged in that and let the band totally drift without direct control. But my ex-wife didn't really have the direct influence on musical direction or managers or all this bullshit that I've been asked.
Okay.
No, that the responsibility for Cold Lake is entirely mine. If anybody has to bear the burden of that, that's me.
Sure.
And I do that. I'm not a coward. I'm not just standing here saying, yeah, I wrote To Make a Therion and I'm the hero that did Pandemonium. No, I also did Cold Lake. And I'm courageous enough to say that. No, I'm here. I did all these things for a reason.
Well, Tom, I like Cold Lake, so I mean.
I feel sorry for you.
But when I interviewed you before, you were saying that was your favorite album
At the time.
Well, at the time it came out.
At the time it came out, I really couldn't give a lesser shit what happened with the band. That's why Cold Lake happened.
Right.
And I actually woken up and controlled the band, it would have never happened. I let the others do so much, I let the producer do so much, and I'm not trying to shift blame on them.
Right.
I mean, I was the original Celtic Frost member. I could have just, with one word, I could have stopped everything, but I didn't. But the reason is I let them do whatever they wanted to do. I was totally absorbed in other things, and I have to bear the responsibility for that. And I take that responsibility.
You know, and I think it was a breath of fresh air, you know, into what was basically already a rotting corpse at the time, you know, because by the end of '87, Celtic Frost was just a shell. I mean, the unity that we had between us three, Tom, me, and not existing anymore, you know. It didn't survive the touring, didn't survive all the fucking with us that the record company did, you know.
That was the key to it.
Money-wise, you know, I mean, as a business venture, Celtic Frost was, at that time, to us, utter failure. Although, in, like, artistically speaking, or also, like, to the outside, it seemed the exact opposite, you know. And that was such an oxymoron to live with. That was so absurd, you know. You come home and you have to have a job the next day where you can at least get the basic money to pay for your rent, or maybe buy some new strings for your bass, and everybody else around you is like, wow, you're stars, you know, you're successful, you're touring, you're doing this, you know. And the touring life was a misery back then, you know, the way everything was organized and done.
I know in the book it seemed really,
yeah, I mean,
really
Tom is depicting that in the book, you know. So I think, and also,
well, you got to eat breakfast.
Also, artistically speaking, and our friendship just didn't it just didn't work out, you know. I mean, just at that time it just fell apart. I think it also had to do with the fact that we started overdoing it within the Pandemonium. We had overreached, you know. We had went over our limits, and of course it became successful. So we thought we could go on further like that. So all three of us had like different ideas or no ideas at all, you know, but still wanted to like join in and talk. Where Reed comes into the game, especially for me, you know, Reed was always one that basically didn't bring in that much artistically, but always was, of course, like trying to.
He was the ladies'
to talk it out. Yeah, it just wasn't.
I remember in the book he said he used to hang the shoes on the drums.
You can see that in the photos, live photos.
Right.
There was another thing I was going to say, which ties in what you said. I'm also describing this in the book. After Pandemonium, I was completely burned out musically.
Right.
It was, for me at the time, I wasn't such an experienced musician as I am now. Doing an album like that and being thrown into charge of production and everything involuntarily together with Martin, it was such an overreaching project that I was so burned out. Even if the band had been in perfect shape and had continued in that lineup, I would have been absolutely unable at the time to write another album like that immediately after.
Right.
I mean, we discussed that. I was burned out. We always said maybe we'll do another Pandemonium in an album or 2 albums time.
Right.
But it would have been utterly impossible for me, even if Cold Lake wouldn't have existed, to do another Pandemonium. I just simply was not capable of that. Pandemonium was beyond of what I was capable of.
That had so much variety on it, and also, but the production on that really seemed to suffer because it seemed like you had so many things going on and so many musicians.
The production of Cold Lake and Pandemonium, and to a large extent To Make a Therion, are very deficient, and that's yet again a direct result of the interference by the record company and the lack of faith by the record company.
Right. That's true.
Right now it's B. At the end of Celtic Frost, we experimented with some lower tunings, and in the beginning of Celtic Frost it was the standard tuning. What it's going to be in the future, who knows?
Okay. Also, I know you're a big fan of Klaus Kinski.
Yeah.
What's your favorite Kinski film?
That's very difficult. I think Aguirre. I don't know how you pronounce that.
The Wrath of God.
Yeah, it's probably the movie that fascinates me most because the insanity contained therein. But I'm also fascinated by the romance he managed to incorporate into his Nosferatu interpretation, to take it away from a plain horror movie and give it a hell of a lot more depth. Even though, of course, it's not entirely original work. It's a refilming, a very faithful refilming of an older movie. Yet still, Kinski was the perfect casting for that movie. But I'm much more fascinated by the person Kinski than by his movie.
Well, you've read his book, right?
Yeah, a million times.
Oh, because I've tried to get that. It's hard to find now. I wanted to read it.
The unfortunate thing is, I bought the English version of this book for my friends in the United States. There was a time when I bought like a whole stack of these books and sent it to all my friends in the States in like 2000. And the English version is only half as thick as the German version, and the translation is very good, but Kinski's language in German is simply not translatable. It's such a street language, a primitive language, but at the same time it's a classy language. It's a very unique combination, and you just simply cannot. You know, he has a very primitive language, and you cannot translate that with the words fuck and things like that. So the English version is a good book, but it's no comparison, and it suffers, and it's also abbreviated.
And does just to get off the subject, I'm sorry. Does monotheist, does that pertain to your spiritual belief, or is that just the overall feel of the album? Is it pertaining to a certain god, or
the title itself? You mean?
Yes.
It's not pertaining to a certain god.
No,
that's why we
mankind.
That's why we choose a title. It pertains to a person believing in a single god. You know, and of course, in our case, has to do with that we grew up in secularized Christian Western society. You know, so we have been influenced. You know, we have been, of course, brought up on values that are based on Christianity, you know, but we tried to get away from that because we tried to get away from that ourselves. You know, all my life is a struggle trying to come to terms with what my parents, you know, what society basically, in the form of my parents, you know, in form of like strict Catholic beliefs, fundamentalist Catholic beliefs, you know, and I'm trying to get away from that, and that is like mirroring that, you know, but that's why we choose that open term of the monotheist, of the person or of a person believing in a single god. Could be a Jew, could be a Christian, could be a Muslim, could be a Satanist, because to me Satanists are just like extreme, it's just another radical, or just a group of other radical Christian sects, because without a Christian god there would no need to be there would be no need for a counterpart. There would be no need for a Satan, you know, because Satan is another biblical figure. You know, it's another figure out of the Old Testament, out of the Jewish scriptures, that was used by the Christians, you know, and then again taken up by Satanists, you know, who are building up a counterpart to what, you know, to that Christian world that we're living in, you know, in the Western world, of course, in the Western Hemisphere.
I was just say I have one more question, and don't take this the wrong way. This is I mean this in respect. Why are you guys opening for Typo Negative? I would figure it would be the opposite.
We're not. We're the special guest. The opener is Brand New Sin.
Oh, okay.
We've played 46 headliner shows of North America last year. I think that's sufficient, isn't it?
Well, I'm saying
we are friends with Typo Negative. Both bands are mutual friends of each other. We got this offer relatively short term earlier this year, whether we wanted to be the special guest. We didn't hesitate for a second. It gives us the chance to expose our music to audiences which otherwise would never hear of us. Mm-hmm. It's a pleasure to tour with them. It's a pleasure to tour with their tour manager. It's a pleasure to tour with their crew. There's only positive things between the two bands. It's a tour with a family, with a friendship feeling, and I think it's one of the best things this band has ever done. This Monotheist tour comprises of about 130 shows all in all, or 140 at the end of this coming summer, of which 25 shows are special guests. Everything else is headliners. So I don't think we're diminishing Celtic Frost's reputation by these 25 shows. Quite the opposite. We seem to get across to the audience very well every night, judging by merch sales and by the reactions we get in front of the bus every night.
There's people that hate our guts, you know, out there. But there's
even without Typo Negative.
Yeah, even without Typo Negative, you know. But you know, the thing is, we've been talking about if we would do sort of like a special guest slot, if we would actually open for somebody else. And we've been talking about that beforehand, and rather not want to do that unless it's somebody that we can truly respect and that we feel we can artistically look up to as well. You know, that we're fans of as well. So we said like we would decide that once offers would be coming in, you know. And when Typo came in, that was like an instant decision because we all love the Typo Negative records. That was